Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Professor.
Good morning,
Hi, good
Professor.
morning, Anna. Good morning, Zachariah.
How you doing,
Good morning,
Professor?
Samira. Well, I see how many are here? How come it says down here eight? Um, and I see only like how many? Five people. Um, all righty. Let me just check briefly who's in the discussion board, right? And let's see. No, no, no. What's happening here? Forum. All right. I see six people. Um, well, I'm sure pretty soon, there will be more people joining us. But if there are six here, then there should be also six here as well. But I see only five. One more person. Jalen is just joining. I see now. Looks like I see six people. Seven, including Anna. So let me. Okay, let me introduce Anna Karen to you this morning. Anna is our supplemental instructor. So she's going to be helping you out. She's going to be, I don't know, she may not be attending classes throughout the entire time, but uh, let me give it to Anna to properly introduce herself. Okay, Anna,
Mm,
please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So as he mentioned, my name's Anna. I took these classes last semester, and I'm here to do supplemental instruction, basically help you guys learn what to study and how to study. And I'm going to be giving a short presentation of the overview of the SI program. Should I do it now, Professor, or do you want to do it towards the end of the class?
Uh, I'm sorry, I forgot I was muted. I don't know if you can share the screen.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
ready to share the screen.
okay, okay, good, good. Because I see you are a moderator, so I think you can share the screen. So go ahead.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So the supplemental instruction program is this is my email, by the way. You guys can write it down and email me if you have any questions after the presentation. So we're going to do a short overview of the program. Supplemental instruction is an academic assistance program that utilizes out-of-class, peer-led review sessions to facilitate students' comprehension of course content and help them towards academic success. So basically, we're forming a learning environment where students engage with the course content to expand their understanding and ultimately improve their academic success. SI targets traditionally difficult courses, those that have high rate of drop, fail, and withdrawal. So if you guys are struggling, just know that you're not alone. These are difficult courses for everyone that, most people that have taken them. So that's also why we target these courses specifically, because a lot of people seem to struggle with them. And we're here to help. SI sessions are open to all students in the course section and are free of charge. So this is included with like your tuition and stuff. This is what the student fees are for resources such as this one, such as this program. Attendance is not mandatory. However, SI participants are more likely to earn higher course grades and withdrawal less often than non-SI participants. like anything else, basically, if you put the effort, you will see results. And statistically, since the program started, people that attend have passed and had higher courses than the people that didn't attend. Continuing the overview, SI supports students towards academic success by integrating what to learn with how to learn. So we're covering course materials as well as study tips and tricks. You know, we're building basically a toolbox for you guys. So this will help you not only in this course, but throughout your whole academic journey. If you attend SI sessions regularly, you will have a better understanding of course content, as well as a toolbox of effective learning skills. This will help you throughout your academic journey. It's just what I said. The program is non-remedial, so sessions are for everyone, no matter your grade. So these are just to better your understanding. It does, you know, it's not specifically for people that are failing. Like if you're doing good and you just kind of want to refresh and, you know, stay on top of it, we're also here for that, as well as people that need help that feel they're behind or not understanding. So this is a little on how the SI sessions are conducted. SI sessions will be held both online via Zoom and in person. So we're doing either one. Like some people learn better online. They feel more comfortable through Zoom, and some people feel they learn better in person. So I'm going to be doing a combination of both. Each session is 50 minutes. Marathon sessions are possible. They're held weekly, those sessions, and they're going to be about 3. We're aiming for 3 a week during different times and different platforms, either Zoom or in person. Marathon sessions mean that if we go over the 50 minutes and you still feel like you need more help, we can help with that and just continue the session, make it longer. Multiple sessions are offered weekly, days, times, and platform to be determined. Please complete Google form. So later on this afternoon, I'm going to be sending out an email that's going to include a Google form that is basically a survey for me just to see what time and dates work best for everyone. And if more people prefer online, we'll do more online, and more people prefer in person, we'll do it in person. The good thing about SI is that there's a lot of room for flexibility. So not everything is set in stone. You know, I'm gonna do my best to try to work with you guys on your schedule, on what's convenient for you, well, for both of us. And the Google form also contains a video that goes more into detail over the mission and of the SI program, and more information like the history of it as well. You are welcome to attend all sessions. Statistically, you do better if you attend at least 1 session per week. Like I said, I'm gonna do 3. We're aiming for 3, and you can attend all of them or some of them. That's completely up to you. How SI are conducted. Content is reviewed in a small group setting, giving the students the opportunity to improve understanding of important concepts, compare notes, get to know classmates, develop study and learning strategies, and test yourself before the professor does. So one benefit of SI is that people tend to learn better in small group settings, and we're going to be actively engaging with the content by working collaboratively to solve problems. So we're going to be solving the problems together and stating like the steps we took to get to the solution. So that's a little bit on what to learn, and we're going to move on to how to learn. So students who attend SI sessions discover appropriate application of learning strategies such as note-taking, vocabulary acquisition, problem solving, understanding components and application of formulas, and building on Excel skills. So these are some of the study skills we're going to be working on. We're going to be working on the content, and as well as seeing what works best for you. That's one of the goals of SI is, you know, everybody studies differently and learns differently, whether it's auditory, visually, kinesthetic, which is by doing, through sensory, and reading and writing. So I'm personally, I'm a little bit of everything. So, but as part of the SI program is for you guys to try it and determine what works for you. How do you learn? as well as reviewing course content and stuff. Lastly, resources. So as another goal of SI is it aims to foster connections with support services. Resources are your friend. So resources, I think, are very important. So I made a whole slide about them because, like, I personally believe, like, I use them for even outside of BMCC, even outside of academic studies. I use resources for, you know, everyday things. One of the main resources is obviously BMCC, which, as you guys know, or you guys are familiar, the library offers printing and copies and Wi-Fi. But a lot of people don't know they actually loan technology such as laptops, computers, even calculators. You can borrow them for a day or for the whole semester. That's available at the BMCC library. And oh, and then another thing is they have when you go on the BMCC library website, they also have a section where you can request to print textbook chapters. So if you don't even have to lug around the whole textbook, you can ask them to request the print textbook chapter, and, you know, keep it as reference. I personally like hard copies of things. I write notes on them, so that's always an option. The next one is the New York City Library, has similar resources as the BMCC library. However, I personally like them because, you know, they're spread out throughout the 5 boroughs, and so even if you don't want to go all the way to BMCC, you definitely have a library that's close by, and you can use those resources. Very convenient. The websites that I have listed here, these are some of the top ones that I use throughout the finance and business courses. Investopedia is really helpful for terms and, like, financial jargon and explaining some of the concepts. And it has most of the concepts have a video on the page.
Anna, excuse me.
Hmm?
I think you can skip this part and actually, explain that when you are actually having an actual
An SI
session with
session.
the students, right?
Okay.
All righty.
Okay,
So,
so let me just finish off by saying that the email is going to contain the Google form, and it's going to contain a link for the Zoom that's going to be held this Friday at at noon to 12:50. And then there's also, on Friday, there's also going to be an in-person at 6 to 6:50. The times and dates are going to change, though, according to the survey, the Google form survey, and that'll be announced later on this week. And that's it.
all right. Thank you, Anna. So, Anna used to be my student in Finance 230 and Finance 300, and she did really, really well in those 2 courses. So, I invited her back this semester to become supplemental instructor, which is a new initiative by BMCC to, I guess it's different from tutor because tutors are not assigned to classes, but supplemental instructors are, like, assigned to the classes, just like, really literally as, to provide supplemental instruction to the students. So please, check back with Anna whenever you think it is, whenever you think you need time. Supplemental instruction, and whenever you can find time. All right. So now let me share my screen. I think, am I sharing my screen? Okay, I think I'm not. So let me share my screen with you. Okay. So I only discovered all this time. It was there, but this blue button with the cross X, X icon, is to actually to hide this panel, and then you have a bigger screen. I must have known it before, but somehow I haven't used it at all. So this way, but it looks like the screen size isn't that much different. But anyway, I'm gonna anyway, when I use when I share my screen and use this, then I won't be able to see that anyway. So last time we were, wrapping up. We were talking about the real interest rate versus nominal interest rate, and so let me bring up again. Where is that thing? Whiteboard. Okay. So I got all the way down. Yeah. Somebody's using some, jackhammer or drill, in my building. I'm starting to get a headache. Now, so now let's think about. We now understand, quite well the relation between real interest rate, nominal interest rate, and inflation, right? Real interest rate is, nominal interest rate adjusted for inflation, right? Which can have three possibilities, right? Either positive, equal to 0, or negative. Okay. If you hear some background noise, please, I hope it isn't that bothering you, but it's bothering me a lot. It's from above. Someone is, doing some work in their apartment, and so there's a lot of, jackhammer and drill going on. I hope it isn't, too loud to you. Now, but so think about it. This works also in the same way for growth, for economic growth rate. So, for example, G, which is which stands for growth rate in GDP, it can have three possibilities, right? Let me actually separate it. Now, GDP growth rate, the economic growth rate, can be greater than inflation, or it can be equal to inflation, or it can be less than inflation. It can be less than inflation. And we understand the implication quite well. If that's the case, then growth rate minus inflation is positive. In other words, and then growth rate minus inflation is 0. And then in this case, growth rate minus inflation is negative. Now, just apply that to the currency, we know very well, and I probably also mentioned this last time, that the since 2021, inflation has been, snarling or ramping up, and by the end of last year, December last year, inflation was almost like 6.5%, right? December to December, and this January, it even broke the record, and they say it's 40-year high. Since 1980s, we never had. I mean, since the end of 1970s, we haven't had this high inflation at all. So January to January, January last year to January this year, 7.5%. Now think about it. Um, that makes it sound like the economy is really in bad shape. But if you think about it, the economy isn't that bad shape. Why? Because uh, the unemployment is very low, historically low. Unemployment is very low. Um, and um, the GDP hasn't shrunk. GDP is actually has grown. Um, so obviously that means economic growth has been very positive. But the problem is, if the economic growth, we know inflation was 7.5%, but if the economic growth rate was greater than that, nobody will complain, right? Because when economic growth rate is, suppose, 10%, if it is like 10%, right? There is still, positive real gain in your income. I mean, GDP growth rate. GDP growth rate is simply, in other words, uh, uh, average growth rate in your income, right? Income on average growth rate of income growth rate on average. So if GDP grew by 10%, GDP is basically, if you divide by uh, the population, total number of population, that's per capita income. So if GDP grew 10%, your per capita income in the US also grew 10%. So obviously, if that's the case, then you will still have you are still 2.5% ahead of the price level. So nobody will complain. Nobody will even sense inflation. But the problem is currently, uh, this is such a coincidence. I mean, they are flipped. Uh, you know, income growth rate is something like 5.7%, where uh, inflation is 7.5%. So uh, everyone is, crying out inflation, right? So think about it. Is it uh, inflation by itself is not a bad thing, really. I mean, unless, of course, 7.5% inflation is crazy, right? Anything above 4% inflation is already, crazy. You can, already sense it. But then, as long as economic growth rate is greater, I mean, that's what we want. I've been telling you, inflation is uh, the result of strong demand, right? Inflation is the result of the strong demand. Of course, that's demand, the case of demand pull inflation. But I've been telling you, both cost push and demand pull inflation are happening now. That's why this is a problem. Uh, but as long as average income is like 10% growth rate in average income, average growth rate in income is 10%. Wouldn't you want that? I mean, isn't that, as long as the growth rate is greater than inflation, isn't that what we want? Um, so that's something to think
I
about.
have a question.
Yeah, yeah,
So what if like the growth rate is like, because I imagine the growth rate is higher for like wealthier families than it is for poorer families. So wouldn't that
yeah.
take something into consideration as well?
That's why I said average growth rate, right?
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
Average growth rate, right? When I said, yeah, the GDP growth rate is 10%, economic growth rate. GDP growth rate is 10%. That means, yeah, GDP grew by 10%. And as of 2020, the US GDP was like 21 trillion. So I haven't checked, but at least 2021, the GDP must have been 22 trillion. But think about it. You divide per, average is, when you divide it by number of, the population in the U.S., then that's average, right? Yeah, some people will have more income growth. Some people will have less. But we can only talk in terms of average, because inflation is basically average. I mean, it affects everybody regardless of higher income. I mean, the number inflation is a growth rate, so it's still the same number for anybody, right? Whether you're wealthier or poorer. Of course, wealthier people would feel obviously less sting, right? They will feel less sting or less bite from inflation. But on average, so our next, look at, so how the inflation has been, this is uh, since 2008, right? Since the financial crisis, this is the benchmark interest rate, benchmark of which is, in the U.S. Federal funds market rate, Fed funds rate. So Fed funds rate is the benchmark short-term interest rate. Benchmark long-term interest rate is the yield on 10-year U.S. Treasury. Okay, I'm gonna go into that a little. So the Fed funds rate, and it's just the target rate, and it's a nominal rate, nominal interest rate. So the Fed funds rate is the trend of the Fed funds rate. In early 2000, right? It was around 1.25. Like even in 2002, 2004, it was somewhere around that, 1.25. And then suddenly over just 1 year, 2005, I believe, that Van Bernanke was the Fed chair at the time, Van Bernanke. Before Van Bernanke, it was Alan Greenspan. Alan Greenspan was Fed chair for almost 2 decades, and then Van Bernanke, and then after Van Bernanke, Janet Yellen. Van Bernanke served 2 terms. Janet Yellen just 1 term. Now after Janet Yellen, it's Jerome Powell. He's serving his 2nd term now. But during Van Bernanke's time, they raised it almost in 1 year, like 2005 through 2005, they raised it like by 4% over just 1 year, and then 2006 through 2007, 1%. So it's like over 2 years they raised it almost by 5%, and then housing market crash hit, and then financial crisis hit. So then they dropped the rate back all the way down to like 0%, 0.25. And then only by 2016, they slightly raised it because the economy was recovering. And then, by the end of 2018, it went up to even 2.5. But then, 2019, there was a scare about recession. So they weren't raising it, and then recession never happened. And then 2020, pandemic hit, and there was a very brief recession, very brief, but we never went into a full-blown recession because as you know, the stimulus package. I mean, people working in the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry, clearly, they got hit. But then otherwise, those who lost jobs got, stimulus checks. In some cases, they got stimulus checks that are more than what they used to make. So people were not even, trying to find jobs, but still, because of, stimulus check, we were able to avert the recession. So now the question is, what's the Fed funds rate? Fed funds rate is the short for Federal federal funds market rate. And the federal funds market, it sounds like something under the control of the Federal Reserve. No, it has nothing to do with Federal Reserve. Okay, Fed funds rate. The name Fed funds comes Federal Funds Market. So this is a marketplace. Of course, it's an online marketplace where for only commercial banks, right? Where commercial banks borrow from and lend to each other, right? So this is the baseline interest rate, lowest interest rate that can ever be. Why? Because think about it, commercial banks need to borrow from each other very often, just overnight, just one night, overnight. Why? Think about it. At the end of the day, they must settle the account. At the end of the day, they will have to close their book for the day, and then obviously their assets and liabilities may not match. Why? Because on the record, they have checks coming in for clearing, and on the record, they should have on the record they have enough reserves, but after aftering the checks, then actual reserve goes down. But then this would be less than their liabilities, which is basically the demand deposits that must that can be withdrawn anytime next business day. So to reconcile this discrepancy, of course, the next day the money will come in, but they will have to meet this reserve requirement just to cover it overnight. So they borrow overnight. Obviously, it's intra-industry transaction, intra-industry, right? In other words, it's between the banks, right? It's between the commercial banks. So it's think about it. It's within the industry, so it has to be the lowest rate, right? When banks borrow, and also you would notice that if you travel overseas, right? If you use cash, the exchange rate, depending on the days, that day's exchange rate, and depending on where you are, you would have the worst, exchange rate. But if you use credit card, you get the best exchange rate. And it's the same thing, So, and so when they borrow, so think about it. So they borrow at between 0 to 0.25%. That's annual. Think about it. All interest rates are basically APR, right? Annual rates. Okay. So daily, just for making an adjustment for one day, it's gonna be 360 or 365. You divide 0.25%, right? Times that. But this is the target rate. In other words, and although federal, as I said, don't get misled by the name Federal Funds Market Rate, because it doesn't mean the Federal Reserve sets this rate. But actually, Federal Reserve sets the target rate. The Federal Reserve sets the target rate. What I'm saying is there's a difference between actual market rate and the target rate, right? So when Federal Reserve sets this target, it doesn't mean that the banks will have to follow. No, no. I've been telling you over and over, in a free market economy, we're in a free market economy, nobody dictates the price. And I told you, interest rate is a kind of price. Isn't that right? We talked about it last time. Interest rate is the price for borrowing money. So price is determined by the market forces. In other words, demand and supply. So although Federal Reserve sets the target rate, it doesn't mean that the banks abide by it. It's not like issuing an edict, right? It's not like the king issuing an edict, right? Let the rate be 0.25 from tomorrow. No, it's not like that. What Federal Reserve does, is they set the target rate internally for Federal Reserve's policy purpose. And then because actual market rate depends on the transaction in the Fed funds market, what Federal Reserve does is they go into the bond market, not Fed funds market, but they go into the bond market, and they engage in bond trading. They engage in the trading of treasury securities. They engage in the trading of treasury securities, and through that mechanism, the Fed funds market, actual Fed funds market rate, will be adjusted. Okay, so here once again, here's the thing: Fed funds rate is not under the direct control of the Federal Reserve. Don't get misled by the name, because the name Federal can be used. The name Federal can be used by anybody. FedEx. FedEx is Federal Express or Federated Express, whatever. I mean, they can use the FedEx is not government or state-owned business, right? It's a private business, right? But they can use it. And the reason it's called federal funds market is because the banks would have to, all these commercial banks have to borrow and meet in the market and borrow and lend on federal level. That's why it's called federal funds market, right? And but Federal Reserve influences the Fed funds market rate by through the open market operation. And the open market operation means bond market, open bond market, right? Here we need to the bond market open bond market operation. So just normally called open market operation. And to understand open market operation, we need to understand what bond is, first of all, what the bond is. So bond is basically a debt instrument. Bond is a debt instrument, right? That means bond is a borrowing, right, with standardized features, so it can be easily traded in the market, right? So one of the very distinct feature is that the bonds have all $1,000 face value. Okay, bonds have 1,000. So if you buy one bond, that means you are lending $1,000 to the company that's sold the bond. It doesn't have to be exactly $1. It's just the face value, right? when you actually buy it, it can be $900 or $700 or even $1,100. The price will be slightly above or slightly below the par value. Okay, the face value is also called par value. It's also called maturity value, also called redemption value. Okay, and the second characteristic is, think about it. So the point is, you lend, you buy, if you buy 10 bonds, right? And if the price is, selling price in the market is $800, you pay $8,000 because you buy 10 of them. And if the maturity is 10 years, 10 years later, you'll get $1,000 per bond. So that's going to be, $10,000, right? $10,000. And then, so you paid $800 and you receive $1,000 per bond. So that difference is called capital gains. You paid 800, you get 1,000. Of course, that's capital gains, right? You will make capital gains. And also, because it is debt, in other words, borrowing from them, from their perspective, and lending from your perspective, it has to pay interest. And so the interest it pays is called coupon interest rate, coupon, and the dollar interest is called coupon. It's usually semi-annual. So the coupon rate is, of course, all the rates are annual. So if the coupon rate is 10%, they will pay you 10% of the face value annually for the maturity until the end of the maturity, until maturity. So if the maturity of this bond is 10 years, you will collect 10% of $100 at the end of every year. But I told you it's actually semi-annual. So that means every 6 months you get $50. Okay, so that's how it works. But again, I said, so who sells bond? It's borrowing. So it's basically either the federal government. There are three entities that can sell bond. The federal government, U.S. government, right? Other countries, other governments' bond, other countries' government are generally called just sovereign bond. And you can understand easily why. Sovereign means, sovereignty, a sovereign nation, right? Self-governing, sovereign nation. So that's why it's called sovereign bond. So there's, U.S. government bond is, treasury is called treasury bond. And then corporations can sell, right? And then municipal government meaning, state government or local governments, local municipalities, they can also sell bonds. And we call, depending on the issuer, there can be treasury bond and then corporate bonds and municipal bonds. I didn't throw in municipal bonds here, but depending on maturity, there are short-term and long-term bonds. Short-term is always, in finance and accounting, the line between short-term and long-term is always 1 year. I told you, money market versus capital market. So basically, long-term is capital market, right? And for treasury only, they have different designations, different names, depending on the maturity. For short-term, under 1 year, it's called the treasury bill, right? Treasury bill. And for maturity between 1 and 10 years is called the treasury note. For maturity between 10 and 30 years is called treasury bond. So bond is the name that's reserved only for the long-term bond. In case of corporate bond, Short-term corporate bond is called commercial paper, right? Long-term corporate bond is called bond. So now I also differentiated, 1 year to 10 year and 10 year to 30 years, but that's just for treasury. That's just for treasury, because the name is different for 1 to 10 years and 10 to 30 years. But for and I call this very long term, but that's just my classification. That's just my nomenclature. It's just my classification. In reality, they are just long term, right? They're just long term. So in bond, corporate bonds can have 30-year maturity. Corporate bonds can have 30-year maturity. When I said not applicable, it doesn't mean they don't have 30 years. It just means, something like very long term, right? Classification like very long term is irrelevant. It's not applicable for bond. Bond just it's just called long term because it doesn't have separate designation, right? So collectively, I mean, although we have treasury bill, treasury note, treasury bond, the collective name, if you call it collectively, is called treasury securities. Okay, it's called treasury securities. And also, depending on, okay, we're going to have to talk about this in the next class because we're already out of time. So, any questions so far? Any questions? Any questions so far? Any?
I have a question for Anna.
Oh yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm here. Go ahead.
Are you gonna be sending the emails to our PMCC email or?
Yeah, I'm gonna be sending it through Blackboard. So whatever email you have on Blackboard is where it's gonna be sent to.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other
All right,
questions?
and yeah, Samira, go ahead. Samira, you're on, Samira. You gotta unmute your. I think you need to turn up your volume or something. Samira. All right, so I will, if Samira, you can, I will remain online for like 5 more minutes. So, but class is officially dismissed. So have a great afternoon, everyone, and I will see
Good day,
you guys.
Professor.
All right, you too. All right, take care, Eric. I will see you guys next
Have a good afternoon,
Tuesday.
Professor.
All right, you too, Anna. All right.
Bye.
All right, take care, everyone.
Have a good one, Professor.
Bye.
All right, take care of Zechariah and Ukba.
Take care.
All right, see ya. All righty, so I'll stop sharing and stop recording. And okay, let me check what's in the chat box before I sign off.